Welcome to Whispers of Resilience, our MS Stories podcast, where Justine Martin, the Queen of Resilience, sits down with each incredible author featured in this highly anticipated anthology. In this captivating series, we delve into the depths of each author's chapter, exploring the hows and whys behind their desire to share their experiences with multiple sclerosis. Prepare to be inspired as these courageous souls recount their triumphs, their challenges, and the resilience that fuels their spirits.
Welcome everyone to Whispers of Resilience, our MS Stories. Today I've got with me Emma Archer. How are you, Emma?
I am well, thank you, Justine. How are you?
Yeah, good. Now, we've had a bit of technical difficulty this morning, so that with our MS brains, we're going well. I think this is take number 5.
Yep.
We should have it all down pat now. All right, let's get into it. Emma, why did you decide to be part of our book project? What inspired you to write your chapter?
I was diagnosed with relapsing remitting MS 6 years ago, and it was a very sudden diagnosis for me. I know a lot of people's stories is 2 or 3 years of symptoms or much longer, but for me it was a very sudden and very big shock. And when I saw that this opportunity to share our stories was being presented to people with MS to support other people just diagnosed with MS, I thought, yeah, I want to be part of that because there's going to be, even if it's just one person, and my story can say to them, it is a huge shock. You don't have to be okay with this. You can be angry, upset, sad. You don't have to be graceful and positive about it, because at the time, a lot of people had a lot of toxic positivity about it. It's like, oh, it could be worse, or oh, it's a good thing you know. And it's like, no, I actually need a space where I can say this is really upsetting and it's hugely life-changing for me. So I wanted to share that aspect of this journey.
And we thank you for sharing that. Did you have fun writing your chapter?
I actually really did. I have spoken to friends who are also authors, and my experience was very classic being an author of, yes, I'm overwhelmed, I've got all these ideas, and then I hit writer's block, and then I wrote too many words, and I wrote a garbage first draft and was convinced I should delete it and start again. And I really enjoyed the process of it as well, of picking through the whole journey and just picking out the things I wanted to share, but not necessarily only the highlights or the lowlights. And it is something I've done a lot of sharing of bits and pieces of it, but not ever my whole journey in one spot. So having a word limit was good because otherwise I could just have kept writing. And I also struggled to find a voice for myself because you have a voice where you go to a doctor and you've got 12 minutes and you just have to tell them what you're there for. Or you have a half-hour appointment with a specialist, but it's only about one aspect of my life. And this was the first real opportunity I had to sit down and write my version of what happened from beginning to end without wondering or worrying about who was going to read it, because it was very much for me.
Yeah, that's a great answer, Emma, in that. Is there something that you'd wish that you'd written in your chapter, but you didn't?
There were a lot of things I took out. I had very little children at the time, and I did start writing a lot about how I explained it to my kids because they were only toddlers at the time, and now they're a bit older. It's been 6 years. So that's a whole aspect of it that I didn't share about being a parent. And I also lost a career out of this. I was a clinical midwife in a group practice. I'd studied at uni. I'd spent 10 years building a career. And it wasn't like retiring where you had an end date. It was literally, I was at work on a Thursday and I never went back. And I now have a different career and I'm finding success in that, but it still isn't necessarily as satisfying or that life goal to do what I do now. So there were aspects of my journey that I would love to have expanded just on how do you find a new career in your late 30s when this is what you've been doing and what you always wanted to
How
do.
did you find that new career?
Completely accidentally. Before I was a midwife, I did a graduate program in the Australian Public Service. And so when I went and spoke with a disability employment service person who said, oh, yeah, no, we don't really help people in mid-career, but, what have you done in the past that you could go back to? Maybe you could go back to retail. I was like, I'm university educated. I don't think they're going to want to employ me. Yeah, so I sort of circled back to I was a midwife who was very, very up close and personal with people's transformative processes. So I ended up finding a position in the Australian Public Service that I get to use my brain, I get to use my communication skills and the skills that I had. It is satisfying, don't get me wrong. I really enjoy my job now, but I don't think I'm ever going to find anything as satisfying and sort of that soul connection that I had with midwifery. So it was just sort of accidental and a bit serendipitous as well. And now I have found more satisfaction and connection with who I am outside of work, whereas before it was sort of not in a all-consuming way, but it really did satisfy a lot of the ethics and goals that I had in there. So now I do a lot more external stuff. So in the end, and this is sort of the thread that came out in writing my chapter, is that being diagnosed with MS wasn't the worst thing that could happen for me. And it also gave me a circuit breaker to really question my work-life balance and where I was going and what I wanted to do with my life.
Nearly like
if
it's a
the
wake-up
perfect
call.
option.
It's like it's a wake-up call, isn't it, for some of us?
Yeah, and at the time I didn't realize it, but I really had achieved most of my life goals and I was in my late 30s. And I know that's not reality. And I know, I wasn't having a midlife crisis, but it kind of came up that, yeah, is this actually sustainable for the next 30 years? Because it's a very physically demanding job. I was on call. It was very emotionally and mentally taxing. And in hindsight, I was probably pushing towards burnout as well. So oddly enough, it wasn't a bad thing to have an external circuit breaker.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
What's something that you can share with someone who's newly diagnosed?
There is no right way to deal with any of this. Our symptoms and the impact that MS has on us is unique, and understanding that we will, as people with MS, we will always go, yes, we all have MS. Tell me about yourself. What does it affect? And we all have weird things, and we'll make that connection because we'll go, oh, is that an MS thing?
And we're
But I
constantly
guess,
learning all the time. Oh, is that what it is?
yeah, or someone will say, oh, yeah, I haven't had like a sense of taste because like I've got a lesion in some place. And you're like, oh my God, is that really? Oh my God, that would be worse than what I have, which is like a weird buzzing in one spot on my leg. And if you had to choose between those, I'm very grateful for still having my sense of taste. But also, I think the biggest thing for me is that it is allowed to be all-consuming, but don't ever lose sight of the fact you're a whole human being. So if you have something else, please don't let your health professionals or your family or yourself just write it off as, oh yeah, that's just something to do with MS, because we're still living, breathing human beings, and that lump or that symptom, don't downplay it as just being about MS, because otherwise things can get away from us.
Yeah.
Or you feel like everything has to be put down to MS and therefore you're not worthy of getting help or resolution or treatment for something that is very treatable as well. So yeah, that's sort of my
No one
take
knows
on
our
it.
body. No one knows our body better than what we do. And we know when there's something else that's wrong. I mean, I went
I
to the
think I
doctor.
think also that I think also that we become very aware. I personally went through I wish I'd known that earlier because I was diagnosed with quite a lot of lesion load on my brain and my spine. And so in hindsight, there might have been other hints, and I've had to make peace with this is when I was diagnosed rather than 20 years ago or 6 years ago or 10 years before I was diagnosed. But for it makes me hyper aware now of if something's going on for me to say this. I don't think this is MS, and it's taken me 6 months of very strongly advocating, and 2 years of raising it with my previous neurologist. And I got a second opinion on Friday. I did touch on this in my chapter that I was getting a second opinion, and it actually turned out to be a complete left field diagnosis that has nothing to do with MS. And it's
Wow.
just because I've been asking my neurologist and I wasn't happy with what they said. So I sought a second opinion, which is a very slow process when you're seeing them in the public system. And so it's been 6 months of waiting for this second appointment. And yeah, on Friday, the person I saw was like, yeah, no, this has nothing to do with MS. This is actually something entirely unrelated and that you'll get over.
How did that make you feel?
Well, it was only last week. So I have really severe peripheral neuropathy. Like I want to chew my legs off level of pain, and it's been unrelenting, and it's not the usual pattern. Normally, when we get pain and peripheral issues, it's after we've had head, neck, thoracic, internal organs, and then it gets to your feet because MS is a central nervous thing. But I've had peripheral neuropathy, really severe peripheral neuropathy. And my previous neurologist basically told me I wasn't trying hard enough and I needed to be okay with a bit of pain. And this is on the background of me previous to this neuropathy. I was running half marathons for fun. I was doing tens of kilometers on my feet like I was a runner. I ran a marathon. It had a huge impact on that. And the second opinion is actually no, there was hidden B6 in a supplement that I've been taking and for 2 years. And so my B6 levels are 100 times the normal. So the number one symptom of severe B6 toxicity is severe peripheral neuropathy. And so he dug through the meds I'm on and said, yeah, it's because this has been swapped from what you thought you were taking. It's now had B6 in it for 18 months or 2 years. So we're going to stop that and it should fade in the next 6 months to 2 years.
Wow.
So I've gone from thinking I'm going to end up in a wheelchair because the pain is so severe. It was hugely impacting on me. It causes a lot more fatigue than I was used to. It was affecting my sleep. And I thought, that's it. I'm going to be in a wheelchair. That's my life now. Clearly, my MS is progressive. It's on the, fast downhill from here. And for him to go, yeah, no, you're fine. You'll go back to like living life like you were 2 years ago. We'll just stop this. It'll take 6-ish months to wash out of your system. And he was really mad. He was like, I'm really disappointed in my colleague because they ignored what you were saying, which is, I don't think this is MS. But they didn't dig any deeper. And my GP didn't even know it was a thing. Most people I know have gone, what? Because it's often hidden in supplements. Yeah, so a lot of people, I'm still unpacking it. I'm mad that I got downplayed. I'm very proud of myself for advocating for myself. It's not been easy because I had to put in a complaint and I had to ask for a second opinion and I've had to sort of start from scratch with someone else. And that is inherently a bit not traumatizing, but it's very emotional to unpack it and go through
and it would
everything.
be stressful as well in the whole thing.
Yeah.
We're putting our lives in the hands of these medical professionals that are supposed to have it all together and know the answers, and quite often they don't. I mean, I was seeing a GP in 2016 and I was going purple and she told me not to worry about it. And she said, come back in 3 to 4 months if it's still happening. Now, if I'd listened to her, I would not be sitting here today, Emma, because I actually had stage 4 lymphoma, as well as leukemia, as well as melanoma, and as well as lividio reticularis and mixed cryoglobulinemia. And she missed all of that, all of it. How can they do that? And just dismissed me. And previous to that, I thought I was having MS internal shakes in my chest, just butterflies in my chest. No, it turned out I had major heart problems. So don't put everything down to MS because other things will go wrong with your body as well.
Absolutely. And also don't put up with if someone says, a fairly plausible explanation of it, which was, yeah, to me it seemed pretty plausible that, my feet would be affected as well, but it just didn't quite sit right because nothing had changed in the past 2 years. My scans are perfect, my biochemistry is great. I'm not any of the things that people would go, oh yeah, these things sort of move together. And certainly the previous neurologist, like she didn't believe me, so she sent me for a rehab assessment, and all of these reports from every single person that I saw over the 10 sessions over a couple of weeks. They were like, why are you here? Because you're doing everything that we would expect in the community past the subacute rehab. There's nothing like it's a waste of your time. And I kept apologizing, saying, I'm really sorry for wasting your time. I'm here because of this. And they're like, yeah, no, you're entitled to use this service. It's part of the public health system, but you're already doing everything in the community. You don't need it to be here. And to have an open heart and an open mind to the rehab, I was quite prepared for them to go, oh yeah, if you do, these 15 minutes of exercises, you'll see X, Y, and Z. But they were all like, no, you're literally seeing the people we would be referring you on to after you finish this. So I guess in the end, being diagnosed for me was the first time I interfaced with the health system as well. I've not had anything prior to that I've needed to go into a chronic illness kind of management connection, but it's something that I'm learning to advocate for myself effectively rather than just jumping up and down and going, this isn't right, or I'm going to sit here until you give me an answer. But yeah, that's probably the advice I'd give, is if it doesn't sit right, or if it's a plausible explanation but it doesn't resolve when they say it will, it's not because you're not trying hard enough.
It's just because you're not being listened.
Yeah, or you accept the simplest explanation is often right. But it's taken literally 2 years of me saying, yeah, but like this is next level impacting on my life.
Let's talk about supplements for 2
Yes.
minutes, because you're the second person in 2 days that has said to me that they've had problems with the supplements that they were taking. Now, yesterday I was chatting to another MSer, and she ended up with her liver not working properly because clogged up from the amount of supplements and potions, herbs, and everything that she'd been given through a naturopath.
Yep. So this was just magnesium because I had really restless legs because of the MS, and I was a runner, and it's quite common for, we're using our muscles quite a lot. So a lot of people will supplement. Plus it was helping because I have the fairly classic bowel issues as well, and magnesium was helping with that. And I have gone through quite a lot of supplements, but when I saw the neurologist, he said, look, you need to be really honest and clear with me about what supplements you're taking, because even if it's something you buy at the herb store or your naturopath's recommended, or your GP mentioned it 3 years ago, or you've bought it online, or it's maybe not legal, I really need to know, because we really need to work out where you're getting it, because normal numbers are like 3 to 10, and mine were 1,000 for B6, and it's a water soluble vitamin, so you in theory paying it out. So it's like you've been taking something, and I don't care. I'm not going to judge you or tell you not to take them. We're trying to work something out. And by that stage, I'm actually only taking zinc because I have a hair nail thing that I take zinc for, and magnesium. And he's like, oh, it'll be in the zinc because often it's sold as an immune boosting thing, and they put B6 in it. And I'm like, I'm really sure it's just zinc. It's just 30 milligrams of zinc. And he's like, no, it'll be in that for sure. And we looked into it. No, it's just zinc. But the magnesium one was like a muscle ease kind of, I can't remember what the name of it is. And I was oblivious to it because my meds are being packed by my pharmacist. So I couldn't even look at the container. So he had to call the pharmacist and have a chat with the pharmacist about it. And it was really interesting because he was like, so you're not taking any mushrooms, you're not taking any magical tinctures, you're not taking biotin, you're not taking a multivitamin, because you can be overdosing on things if you're taking more. And I'm like, I've tried them. They didn't make any difference to me. I have tried a few. They didn't make a discernible difference. So I've stopped because they're expensive, and I don't want expensive wee, basically. And they weren't making a difference. So, and I take enough medications already that I don't want to tax my liver any further. Like I'm
You on disease modifying therapy?
yeah, so I'm on Kesimpta now, which is a monoclonal antibody, but it still does tax your liver, one particular detox pathway in your liver. So it has to be, and I'm on an SNRI rather than an SSRI. So that also puts a tax on my liver. So I have to be really careful not to be, you know, going wild with supplements. And I have a big chat with a pharmacist as well before I take any more, because some medications I can't go on now because they will overload that particular pathway. So I was surprised, and I've spoken to a heap of people, and I'm still friends with a lot of health practitioners and health people who work in allied health and a lot of runners, and people are like, oh my God, I have never heard of that before. And a couple of people have like, oh, if you had asked me what my supplement was, I would have said it's magnesium. That's it. But it's got B6 in it. It's like, yeah. So you got to be really careful to read it. And if you don't understand it, go and ask your pharmacist to explain it.
And that's why you've also got to disclose to your medical practitioners exactly the supplements that you're taking. And when you fill in the forms, fill in, it could be just vitamin C or like your case, magnesium or whatever it is, but it's really important to disclose absolutely
Yeah.
everything
And he made it clear that the neurologist that I saw made it clear he wasn't going to try and talk me out of it. If it works for you, you're happy to pay for it, then it's not up to him necessarily to go, there's not a lot of research behind X or Y. But I said, no, I take vitamin D because it's the middle of winter and I live in a southern state and don't get a lot of sunshine. But that's a high dose every 3 months. And these are the only two. And he's like, that's it. Are you triply sure? Because a lot of people won't say, oh yeah, I do take vitamin C, or I do take a echinacea and something or other. So yeah, if anything, it's really clarified that it's super important that people aren't going to necessarily judge you if you say, yes, I do take lion's mane or biotin.
Especially if you're newly diagnosed as well. Like it's like, oh, that won't matter, or this won't matter, or oh no, I can't disclose this, or even, something happening with your body. I've gone into my old neurologist and I couldn't orgasm anymore. Now, this is a subject that, normally is taboo, and like, how are you going to fix it? Now, he nearly fell off his chair because I don't think in the 30 years or so that he'd been a neurologist had anyone walked in and actually said that to him. And I'm like, you need to fix this. You need to fix it now. This is an important part of my life. And
absolutely.
Yeah, within a week, I was in hospital having steroids to fix
because
that.
They're very quick to say, so tell us about your bladders, your bowels, how you're sleeping, restless legs, what's your pain like? And it's like, well, actually, the biggest thing impacting on my life is that my libido has gone missing. And even when I'm in the mood, I can't orgasm. And they're like, oh, yeah, that's a shame. But if it was a man, they'd be like, well, here's, all these supplements, because there's a lot of medications that have that side effect in men. And I think it is. I don't want to say it's the patriarchy, but I just felt like I was dismissed with the level of pain I was in and how much it was impacting on my life. I did get a little bit of that, oh, women are just so, just you put up with a bit of pain. It's like I run half marathons for fun. I had kids without meds. It's not a pain thing, really. It's something a lot more serious. But it's funny now because I've stopped taking it now for nearly 2 weeks. And do you know how many times I hit my feet every day and kick things? And I can feel things in my feet for the first time in forever. A little bit. The pain's a lot worse, but the sensation's coming back. And I'm like, wow, I'm really clumsy. I haven't been able to feel them. So I kick like door frames and I walk on things and I'm like, oh yeah. So
it is coming back.
It is
reversing.
The pain's getting, like the neuralgia pain is getting worse, but the sensation is coming back. But they're hot and cold, and yeah, he said, yeah, you'll get like just as it faded away, it'll come back sort of, but give it 6 months and you'll be over the worst of it. And there's unfortunately nothing. It's not like if you had an overdose of heavy metal, or for some people needing a plasma exchange. He's like, yeah, there's nothing that we can do to like hasten it. You just need to drink a lot of water, basically.
Oh, God. Not like when you come off some of the MS drugs and they give you a chemical flush. You can't do any of that.
No, and he's like, it's not stored anywhere, so it's just a homeostasis thing. He's like, you just need to drink a lot of water, and that's probably what you're doing already. So, yep. And he's going to see me again in 6 months and possibly redo the test. But
how did you feel
yeah.
mentally once you were told that that's what was doing it and that you were being listened and validated?
It's funny. I went to this appointment on Friday, week before last, and was fully expecting really terrible news that it was secondary progressive. I was progressing pretty quickly. My EDSS, so is enhanced disability scoring scale for MS people, has gone from being like a 1.5 to 2 to like 6, and it was quite rapidly progressing. Blah blah blah. That's what I was expecting to hear. So for him to go, yeah, no, your MS is stable. You should really be the same as you were 3 years ago. You're on stable meds. Your scans are beautiful. You're still in the active inflammatory, like your lesions still light up. So you're still in that active inflammatory stage. So you're definitely not secondary progressive, and this will get better. I was not prepared for that. I was absolutely, and I kind of felt like I'd been like given something and I was waiting for him to take it back. And like I walked out and I'm like, oh, I was just waiting for him to go, oh yeah, no, actually these aren't your results, or no, this isn't
But
yeah, or yes, but the reason is because you've got this other thing, like that actually indicates your kidneys are screwed and you're going to need a transplant. Like I was expecting for that other shoe to drop. And for the first time, I have to say, I have hope that it's not going to get worse and that I can go back to doing something, because I love running. I know a lot of people will joke and go, the only time I'm running is if there's a bear chasing me, but I happen to really love it. I'm incredibly slow and I'm very much a back of the pack runner. I make everyone else feel good, basically, but I really love it and I love the people, and it was a huge part of my social group, and they still make me feel very welcome, and I do a lot of volunteering, but I miss it. Like I miss it viscerally. And for him to go, yeah, you should buy yourself another pair of runners and you'll be starting at 0, but there's nothing to stop you going back out and doing what you were doing. I cannot overstate how much joy and hope I didn't realize I didn't have. That I was I'm living a good life. Don't get me wrong, but I'm not planning a future to go to a conference in December in Christchurch without someone coming with me, because it's going to be exhausting and difficult and I can't walk. I've got to take my wheelchair and all these things. And for him to go, yeah, within 6 months you should be back to how you were a few years ago. Just having that hope all of a sudden from a complete, like I was not expecting it as well. I didn't even realize that I had lost it until it was such a, and he wasn't particularly friendly about it. He wasn't like, oh, I'm so pleased I've met you. Like none of that. He was just like, I'm so annoyed at my previous colleague for not picking this up, that this is not MS. And he was like, yeah, like I don't really not care. But he's like, yeah, no, this shouldn't be a thing for you. Like,
no.
I'm so mad, but your MS is actually really boring. I don't need to see you again for like 12 months. And then he called me back and said, I'm really sorry, you started a new drug only 6 months ago, so you do have to come back in at the 12-month point, unfortunately. But he's like, yeah, no, you shouldn't, you haven't had any relapses. You really shouldn't be thinking this much about your MS at this stage. It should be stable. It should be in the back of your mind. Get on and live your
Interesting to
life.
see what happens in the next 6 to 12 months with you, Emma. And we're friends on Facebook, so I'm sure I'll see you
We'll be able to see.
pounding the pavement and running for that. And would you recommend this writing process? Because what you guys actually got were your 6 weeks of writing the chapter. You've become part of a community altogether of like-minded peers. Would you recommend it to anyone else?
Absolutely. I've got friends who are going through not MS, they're parents of a very sick child, or they're dealing with a, other things going on in their life. And I'm like, yeah, I wish there was this for other people's life journeys, because everyone does have a story, and it's fascinating seeing different people. But from an MS point of view, we are all unique in our journeys and our approaches. I can't wait to read everyone else's story, because I know mine. Mine isn't actually very interesting compared to some of the other stories that we touched on, and having the
Let's just
mental.
touch on that
Mm,
there's 26 of us in the book, and I'm the only one, and the editor are the only ones who have read everyone's chapter. So we've kept it quite private from each of you, just so then you're not influenced by anyone else's chapters as well. I mean, we all came into the writing groups, 3-4 times a week over that 6-week period, and friendships were made, and that community built, and finding your tribe, so to speak. But yeah, it'll be interesting to hear the feedback from all of you when you all read each other's chapters, and they're all so different.
it's also something that I often will come across people. Like, I got a tattoo a couple of months ago now, and the person I see, her sister has MS. And she's like, I don't know anything about it. I don't know what it looks like. I don't know what she's going through. And she's very private and doesn't really want to talk to me. And I'm like, I will be dropping a copy of this book off, because it will have 20, I said 25, which is a good guess, different stories and different ages and stages of it as well. And she's like, oh my God, I will buy one for everyone in the family after I've read it. And just that, knowing that there's going to be a resource, because I often see people on Facebook groups. I do a lot of peer mentoring and peer support, and it's like, I'm so sorry you're here with us, but these are the stories of us, and life goes on in lots of different ways. But just having the opportunity also to have someone such as yourself, who is a published author, and working with editors and so forth, to say, this is how you do it. Not if you want to be a professional writer and pay your bills by authoring books for the rest of your life, but just that snippet was just fascinating. And now I don't know, I've got that itch to share that story, but also I know how much work goes into sharing the stories as well. So it's been absolutely fascinating watching other people's journeys as well, because people were quite vulnerable, and they did share, some really interesting parts of their life that had nothing to do with MS.
Yeah, they have. And, I'm so honored that you all trusted me with your stories to put it into this book. And like, going forward, we have another writing group for anyone out there that is interested in writing their story and sharing it in a memoir or poetry. And we meet a couple of times a month, sorry, on Zoom. And then you get to work with me 4 times a month on one-on-one. So if anyone is interested, drop us a line and I can send you all the details. Or Emma, if you've got these people that want to share their stories and that, please hand them on my details for sure. I know there's about 5 authors from our book that are writing now their memoirs and expanding on their chapters, and want to tell their full story. So that's exciting as well, to be working with them now through into the next stages, and them bringing out their stories. Is there anything else that you'd like to add that we haven't covered, Emma?
I think the biggest part of this journey was having you on board to say your story is worth listening to, because for me, it's like, it's not the most interesting story. It's not dramatic. It's not, I'm not famous beforehand. I'm not, that you think about Christina Applegate and a couple of other people who were famous and then were diagnosed, and it's nothing like that. But I also want to say thank you for giving me the space, and us as a group, and yourself, to share stories, because I I think I had that expectation beforehand that you had to have a really interesting story and be a great writer, and to be palatable to everybody before you should be writing. And this really opened my eyes. And now I'm looking at other aspects of my life going, yeah, I reckon I could write about that. And I don't really care if no one, like, if it's not it's not going to appeal to a very broad
What's
audience.
that after this podcast today, Emma, about the
Yes,
story?
but I just want to say also thank you for having faith in us, because there were times when I was like, I'm just deleting the whole thing, and you would say, of course, that's just another step in the being a writer. If you will always hit a wall of going, this is terrible, I'm going to start again, and that feedback was really valuable. It does, and that it's part of the journey that it's just like MS. You do go through an ugly phase, and then there's other bits of it.
That's right. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast today, and I'm sure that someone out there listening has gotten something out of our chat. And remember to go and buy Whispers of Resilience, our MS stories, and read all about Emma and the other 25 that are in there as well. So thank you for joining us today, Emma, and thank you, listeners, for listening. And remember, stay healthy, stay well, and until next time, we'll see you.
Are you ready to be inspired? Get ready for the book that will touch your heart and ignite your spirit. Whispers of Resilience, Personal Stories of Living with MS is now available for purchase. Have you ever wanted to peek into the lives of individuals who have triumphed over adversity? Look no further. This highly anticipated anthology brings together a group of exceptionally talented authors, all living with multiple sclerosis, who share their personal journeys with unyielding honesty and vulnerability. At www.resiliencemindset.com.au, you can now secure your copy of this remarkable book that captures the essence of resilience, hope, and the power of the human spirit. Dive into the stories that will captivate your imagination and open your heart to the triumphs and challenges faced by these courageous individuals. With each turn of the page, you'll witness the unbreakable spirit of these authors, as they navigate the unpredictable terrain of MS. Their words will inspire you, uplift you, and remind you of the incredible strength that lies within. Visit www.resiliencemindset.com.au now and embark on a transformative journey through the pages of Whispers of Resilience. Get your copy today.